G'day everyone. In November 2018, the Queensland branch of the AEVA held the EV Expo at the Brisbane Convention Centre. This displayed a wide range of electric vehicles and had a bunch of presentations from experts in the industry. And this video is just a couple of those experts and what they had to say. If you're interested in coming to the Queensland branch monthly meeting, it's on the third Wednesday of each month at 7:30 at the Albion Peace Centre. I hope you enjoy the video and I'll see you on the next one.
Emotion Concepts is striving to offer a product filling the gap between highly populated areas and inefficient transportation options. The result is to offer a sustainable and efficient option to cars and other forms of transportation. Wolfgang has a background in medical physics and holds an MBA in Technology and Innovation Management from the University of Queensland. Wolfgang has worked in a number of startup technology companies in medical devices, telecommunications and more recently automotive. To address ultralight super efficiency and mobility for city areas, please welcome Wolfgang.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks to the AEVA committee for letting me have a talk here. So, Emotion Concepts, it's a startup company, and we basically formed it about 12 months ago. And the idea basically was to look not just at AVs, but generally at mobility in urban environments. So, let me start with this. So, what is mobility? Now, I hope this is going to work. Okay, Google, what is mobility?
Is the definition of mobility the ability to move or be moved freely and easily?
So she said, it's the ability to be moved and moved freely and easily. So that didn't work, obviously. So looking then at the word mobility, I looked a little bit further in the use of the word mobility these days. And as you see actually that the mobility peak of the word use was sometimes in 1980, and I think that's when the bricks of the mobile phones came out and everything. And at the same time, we have to think about it that the word mobility also is not just used in transport, so medical mobility and economic mobility and so forth. But that's just a sideshow at the moment. So, in relation to transport, mobility refers to the movement of people or goods. And travel means a person or ton mile, and it assumes that an increase in the travel is actually of an economic benefit to society. So if we look at mobility trends, it is interesting to note that the person kilometers have actually plateaued in this area here. Oh, can't see it. So the blue is the person transport, but the freight transport has actually increased. And there's a good question about why that has happened. The key factors which will have the greatest impact on our transport system with the potential to both disrupt and transform services is according to the National Transport Commission's report, automation, shared mobility, data availability, and changing in consumer demand for convenience and new services. From my point of view, changing consumer demands for convenience and new services is the key in terms of the urban mobility issues. So, if we look at the changing consumer demands, living preferences have changed, and we get a greater urbanization, where people live in inner city living in high-rise apartments. At the same time, convenience, particularly sort of in the millennials, has seen an increase in e-commerce, direct-to-consumer, such as eBay, Amazon, and so forth. The other big thing which we have seen over the recent years is the sharing economy or no ownership principles, such as Airbnb, Uber, car next door, etc. So the inner city living effects on urban mobility obviously can have a rise in the congestion, parking difficulties, and particularly through tailpipe emissions, the air quality. The convenience effect on urban mobility, with the rise of e-commerce transactions, we see a much higher percentage in light vehicle transports, because it goes now to basically direct to consumers, and they want to have it with instantly. So we see deliveries from supermarkets, from groceries, and the same thing is with all the food deliveries, like Foodora, Deliveroo, etc. The sharing economy effects. I call this the Uber problem. Everyone thinks that Uber, as a car sharing company, actually reduces traffic. That is not true. When I came in on the radio, it just said that you can get in the inner city area now an Uber within 3 minutes. 3 minutes is a very short time to get a transport. And as such, you ask yourself, where are all these Ubers? They're contributing to the inner city traffic. They can't be on ranks like taxis, so they have to be basically driving around until they get a fare. And any time I have used an Uber, the person has not really shared their car. They did it as a job, as a taxi driver. So, in a recent study by Bruce Scheller, he showed that ride-sharing like Uber and Lyft have caused a 160% increase in inner-city traffic. The overall ride-hailing passengers worldwide increased from 1.9 billion to 2.6 billion from 2016 to 2017. In addressing all these things now, we would like to introduce the emotion concepts, the CB, or actually the company first, sorry. So, emotion concepts, we're looking at mobility as a service, in urban environments, efficiency for short travel, last mile, first mile transport. So, with that, I want to come to what everyone's waiting for, the actual EV. So, is it a car, is it a scooter? No, it is a CB. CB is a three-wheel moped, which is very efficient, at about 50 cents per 100 kilometers. It has a smart background in terms of connectivity to apps and so forth. It's lean in terms of the materials used and also the parts count. Green because it's electric. It is fully Australian compliant as a three-wheel moped and can be registered throughout Australia, can be driven on a car license. Well, it is highly energy efficient. Just some short facts. The consumption is 40 watt-hours per kilometer. The range is between 70 to 90 kilometers per charge. Maximum speed 50 kilometers per hour. Total weight 270 kilometers, and it fits 3 persons. The sizes, as you can see. The construction has been a light composite monocoque construction, which is fiberglass sandwiched between fiberglass sheets. That has a great advantage in terms of the safety of this vehicle. The vehicle is powered by 2 hub motors in the rear, and the power plant is a 4 kilowatt lithium-ion battery. The total parts count of this vehicle is 270. It has been crash tested in Sweden. And the clean part is obviously the highly efficient battery. So what can you do with 85 kilowatt hours? It's 1 Tesla or 20 CVs. In terms of the comparison, with your normal car, like a Tesla or something like this, you would look at about a consumption of 238 watt-hours per kilometer, where the CB only has a consumption of 40 watt-hours per kilometer. And the charging, obviously, can be done on a normal 240-volt plug with a DC charger. So this is another view of lean, where we see a normal car or internal combustion engine having over 10,000 parts. And with the CB, we're looking at 270 parts. Whereas we always see electric vehicles and thinking that electric vehicles are the be-all and end-all to all the problems We forget that a Tesla, a Leaf, or whatever still contributes to congestion. It still doesn't alleviate parking problems. And I know this is debatable, but in a coal-fired economy, does not necessarily reduce the CO2 either as much. So the only advantage of that is the local emissions, whereas the CB can address all four. In terms of business models, Bzt is a company in Sweden. They have started up with a delivery with a pod taxi service in 2015 with 50 pods first in Göteborg. They now have 100. After that, they started up in Stockholm with 50, and they currently are on a crowdfunding adventure to get 200 by the end of 2019, which basically shows that there is a demand for these services. The other thing too is, and that comes back to our business models, is that to make it more affordable, we might be looking that we retain the rights to the skin. Because I can tell you, I've done 4,000 kilometers with this vehicle here in Brisbane, and everyone turns their head, gives me the thumbs up, so you might as well put some advertising on. And because it is from Sweden, it has to be IKEA. We can get it to you as a flat pack with a Allen key. I want to rush through this. How are we going for time? Okay. So the passenger version also comes as a cargo version. This cargo version will be a fully connected system with a CB keyless system. The specifications are pretty much the same, except that the area in the back, is now the cargo space. We will have, as a connected vehicle, we will have to change status in the app, GPS positioning, battery usage, and. So you will have control over the fleet at all times. I'm actually ahead. So before I finish, just with regards to other business models as well. We are looking at basically having a battery swap system with the unit. Simply 10-minute swap time at a 4 kilowatt battery that is achieved quite easily. We're not looking at a 100 kilowatt battery which weighs 700 kilos or something like that. The other thing too is, again, it presents an opportunity to have another recurring revenue stream and a repeatable business. Other usages are, for instance, in the urban environments where we see more and more urbanization in high-rise buildings, apartment buildings, and so forth. So we could imagine that we have, as part of the body corporate fees, 10 units or something, which can be unlocked through an app and can be used as inner city vehicles. The top speed is just 50 kilometers an hour. Now, within Brisbane areas, some of the areas are limited to 40 kilometers per hour. In saying all this, it is a highly efficient vehicle, and we're looking at about 50 cents per 100 kilometers. So here are a few photos from my travels through Brisbane and the Gold Coast. Thank you very much.
Dr. Andrew Jeremijenko did his medical education in Queensland. He's both a GP and a specialist in occupational and environmental medicine. He's also completed, and this is the shopping list, the Masters of Applied Epidemiology, MAE, a Certificate of Higher Education, Adult Education, so again, set forward action learning positions. He has a Masters of Health Administration. Can you come to Tassie and look after our hospitals? He's worked in Australia and overseas as Chief Medical Officer for Woodside, BP Medical Advisor in Indonesia. He's the coordinating doctor and international SOS in Jakarta, the Rural Flying Doctor Service in Port Hedland as the Medical Officer. He's dealt with bomb victims to tsunami and earthquake victims and industrial accidents and explosions in Indonesia. He currently works in the Mater Private Emergency as well as providing services through tele-DR. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Jeremijenko.
Thank you very much. Actually, when I tell people I'm an occupational and environmental physician, most people don't know what that is. Does anyone here know what it is? See, it's amazing. So all this work and no one knows what I do. But basically I work with companies like oil and gas companies, like resource companies to take care of their workers. And we look at the effect of health on work and the effect of work on health.
In a serious health warning made public today, the World Health Organization's Cancer Agency announced that diesel engine fumes can cause lung cancer. Now, based on compelling scientific evidence, the experts now urge people worldwide to reduce their exposure to diesel fumes as much as possible.
Breathing in the exhaust fumes from diesel vehicles is now ranked as important a health threat as breathing in secondhand smoke. The WHO's Cancer Agency further warns that ingesting diesel fumes belongs in the same potentially deadly category as asbestos, arsenic, and mustard gas.
The number one finding is that diesel exhaust exposures are carcinogenic to humans, a group 1 carcinogen, the highest level you can possibly have.
Large populations all over the world are exposed to diesel exhaust every day.
So that's one. Let's do this other one as well.
Are a deadly carcinogen.
I had no idea.
Really? Are you serious?
It's a bit of a shock, really, to hear something like that.
That's really bad.
I think it's shocking, actually shocking to hear that.
I thought diesel was always meant to be better, and I guess that's actually really scary when you consider how many diesel-fueled vehicles are getting around.
It's like something to think about with what we're breathing in every day.
That's something we should all know.
That's got to be one of the most shocking things that I've heard. I didn't know that.
How serious is it?
The World Health Organization has declared that in a confined space, diesel exhaust emissions have now been defined as a potential killer.
So what are you saying? It could potentially kill you?
I didn't know about that.
They're a deadly carcinogen. That's the World Health Organization. My God.
I actually have a brother who works in the mines, and he's a truck driver. So that is actually a really scary thought, and I'm almost positive that he wouldn't even be aware of that at all.
Diesel engine exhaust fumes are effectively now viewed as a deadly substance that can and does cause cancer.
And as for people who work in mines, that's unimaginable what must be affecting them.
Now governments around the world, big business and mining industry giants have started to address ways to ensure that humans who were and still are subjected to these deadly particles are aware of the amount of these minute particles in their workplace environment.
Like even kids who wait for school buses and the buses everywhere pull up and they spew out that black smoke.
The goal now.
So we all know that smoking's bad, and the same is basically it's the same level of carcinogen as diesel fumes, and that makes sense. They're basically both smoke, isn't it? Smoke is bad. So in the 1980s, the WHO declared smoking a carcinogen, and now 2012 actually it was declared a diesel fume as carcinogens. Now I sometimes have. There's a bit of a rivalry between engineers and doctors. Are there any engineers here? Hello? They don't often talk back. I always, because I work a lot with oil and gas companies, I've got used to talking to engineers. I like to keep it very simple. I talk in short sentences. And when it comes to health especially, I really dumb it down. So health for engineers. You need clean air. You need healthy food, clean water and exercise. You don't always get it. But look, I'm not going to concentrate on those 4 things. That's a bit too much. I'll just concentrate on one, the clean air. Sorry, that was meant to be a joke. Air quality, Jakarta. I lived in Jakarta for 8 years. I did 4 years with SOS and I did 4 years with BP. And nearly every day it looks like this. It's a grey, smoky day. You look up, you can't see the sun. It's actually wonderful coming back to Brisbane and seeing the blue skies. It was one of the reasons why we left, is just this continuous air pollution, well over the WHO standards. And it actually was one of the things that drove me to doing more about air pollution in Australia, because I don't want us to end up like China and Jakarta and all the big cities in Asia. But that's where we're heading. Our populations are going up to 3 million, 5 million. If we don't do something about emissions, we will head up to these people and you won't see the sun anymore. The easiest way to, people sort of understand black lung, so they understand that dust is bad for you. Now diesels have particulates as well, but with coal dust you get black lung. So fine particulates are they're smaller than a human hair, and they go into your lungs, and your lungs end up looking like this. And that's not good for you. And recently, I don't know whether you know about silicosis in the kitchen bench tops. People have been cutting the bench tops. There's a lot of silica, just like in the mines, and they're breathing in with angle.
Just a note on that photo.
And they're getting
The lithium-ion
they start at 16, they're getting lung transplants by the age of 30.
Is 90
so it's a really
ampere-hours,
serious issue that we're dealing with.
the
And we can
stainless steel
control
ones
this,
on the
but
left
people just don't
are
take the
75
care
ampere-hours
to
each.
make sure they're breathing clean air.
They're exactly the same
So
height.
it's just bad air quality that is causing
With
these
two of the
diseases.
75s, you're basically
And
nearly
control of
doubling
the
the capacity.
then we're not controlling the emissions or the dust.
Oh, and the
And
chemistry
basically,
of the
diesel exhaust is
the
probably
stainless
worse
steel ones,
than silicosis
lithium,
and black lung.
nickel,
It's
manganese, cobalt
it's
oxide.
much more carcinogenic. So it's a really bad combination for coal miners when you have the coal dust and the diesel exhaust, and a lot of our mines are still using diesel engines underneath in the underground mines, and they have to work very hard to try and get the diesel exhaust to the new emission standards in mines. The Cancer Council says in Australian workers we're getting about 130 lung cancers a year from diesel exhaust. And that's just the workers, that's just not the people on the streets breathing in. And everybody, all the insurance companies are like it with asbestos. They're starting to increase insurance claim costs and premiums for people who are exposed to diesel exhaust, and it's a big future problem. And there have been lots of articles now, diesel particulates are dangerous, death by diesel. The industry reacts to a damning report by the World Health Organization. People are beginning to stand up and know this, except here in Australia. And I think one of the problems is diesel is so fine and so small, and that's what makes it more dangerous, that we don't see it and it's invisible. And how do you control something that's invisible? I've done lots of talks on this. Clean Air Queensland has took me out to John Darr, and they've got problems not just with coal dust, but also the diesel fumes. All the trucks go by every day with the coal. The trains, we've got coal dust and diesel fumes going right past multiple schools, multiple houses in Brisbane, and so we are being exposed. And the other concept I want you to get is that firefighters, these are what we call products of combustion. So there's two issues with diesel fumes. One is you've got the particulate matter, the little carbon black, but secondly you've got all the PAHs and all the products of combustion. Now, I deal with firefighters as well as an occupational physician. They get cancers, and we compensate them. So these are the 12 cancers that if you get as a firefighter in Queensland, and you've been working for 5 or 15 years, that we will automatically compensate you. Brain cancer, bladder cancer, kidney cancer, Hodgkin's lymphoma, leukemia, breast cancer, all of these are due to, most likely, to products of combustion. And that's what diesel fuels is, and all fuels are basically products, all fuels have an exhaust that emit products of combustion. So basically smoke or exhaust is bad. These are some of the particulates that you get. So as I said, there's gases and there's fine particles. The particulate phase, you've got the carbon black, about 41%, and they're very, very tiny. Ash, sulfates, unburnt oil, unburnt fuel. 92% of these are smaller than 1 micron. So with coal dust, it's sort of like below 10 microns. Diesel is actually even finer. Okay, where did it go? Oh.
Next to the microphone.
Next to the microphone again. Okay, sorry. Diesel is even smaller, and so it gets even further and it goes into your bloodstream, and so that's why we're seeing damage to the brain, damage to the heart, damage to multiple organs, because it goes right into the blood vessels. That's the gas phase, CO2, nitrogen, nitrogen oxide. Again, all of these things are bad for health, for asthma. And they're right, kids on the street are the little emission filters. They're basically breathing in diesel, they're taking it out of the environment, and they're breathing out, not the diesel fumes stay in their bodies. Aldehydes, benzenes, these are all like carcinogens, PAHs. We think with the polyaromatic hydrocarbons, they get absorbed onto the carbon black, you breathe it in, and that just makes that even more dangerous. So it actually gets absorbs onto the blood vessels and causes the cancers. And what we're seeing now is not just in miners and in people who are exposed to high levels of diesel fumes. I've done cases where a guy was a signal man and they used to work for the army, had diesel trucks running all the time to charge his radio, and they were building generators to charge the radios. He got a non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and we got him compensation from the army. But we're seeing lots of this near main roads now. So it's a strange thing. In Jakarta, people like living on main roads. They have in big houses, they can show off their wealth. In Australia, we tend to move, the richer people tend to be a little bit away from the main roads, and that's good science, because the closer you are to a road which has diesel trucks on it, the more exposure you get to diesel fumes. And we're seeing strokes, heart attacks, cancer, depression, dementia, all associated with living close to main roads. And this epidemiology is becoming very strong. So basically, main roads are bad for your health. And there's something called a threshold debate, which I had in a court case recently, and that's basically that there is no safe threshold. So certainly, when you're in China and you're breathing in all the crap every day, it's bad for you. But just because you're in a nice little New Zealand town somewhere where you think the air quality is fine, it doesn't really matter. The actual, don't know where that's coming from. Oh, next door. The air quality is dangerous no matter how low it is. Even at very low levels, you will be exposed. And we can see epidemiologically, when you look at the whole population, that there's higher rates of strokes and heart attacks. So WHO, NEPM is the National Environmental Pollution Monitoring, and NPI is National Pollution Inventory. They're all saying that there's no safe threshold. We have to keep air pollution down as much as possible. Now, Indonesia is not what we want to copy. I've been there. That's actually a river, that top right-hand photo, and it's just covered in plastic. And that's the traffic that you get every day. That's the pollution. They're the floods. It really is a dangerous city to live in, and China is even worse. So I guess the other thing that I wanted to touch on very quickly is that it's not just the exhaust that's a problem. I've been an advisor for BP and for Woodside, and what we see there is that the fuels are dangerous. We did an epidemiological study called the Health Watch study, and we see in people who are upstream, so these are people who sell oil or get the oil and then put it into the tanks. We saw particularly that they have high rates of leukemia. And that's been able to be reduced as we get more and more closed systems. So in the old days, they did a lot of dipping, and you'd have diesel fumes you'd have petrol on your hands. But now that we get to closed systems where you don't touch the petrol, we're getting better. But this sort of thing where you suck petrol out of a can, out of a car, and put it into jerry cans, that is actually bad for you. It does get absorbed. I still see people doing it. Don't steal petrol. The MARTA has just done a thing on the jet fuel syndrome study, and it's shown that the jet fuel is toxic. They actually now, in the old days, the problem with fuels is you can't test for it. So you get exposed to diesel or to petrol, you come and see me 4 hours later, it's gone from your body, it's been metabolized, I can't see it. But now what we can do is we can see markers of it in your gene. So we can actually see how it gets onto your genetic profile and changes the genes. And we've shown that jet fuel is toxic, and the same fuel components that are in jet fuels are in all fuels. So it's not just the exhaust. That's bad because you've burnt it and now it's like smoke, and that's bad to breathe in. But if you're touching petrol, if you're working with petrol, it's not good for you. It's toxic to your skin, to your respiratory system. And there's kerosene, benzenes. These are all carcinogens as well, class 1 carcinogens. So we've seen the cars evolve. We've seen them go from, the horse-drawn carriage to the internal combustion engine, and now we've got the electric vehicle. Now, you notice with that girl, she's not wearing any protective clothing. She's not scared of any petrol or toxic effects at all from that car. That's a BMW electric vehicle, I think. They're battery powered. We don't, in general, you don't have any exposure to fuels. I've actually got the plug-in hybrid. I've got the Mitsubishi Outlander, and that does have, you've got a backup engine, so that when you run out of your battery, Now, I did ask my wife to pose on the car in a bikini, but she told me to piss off. But some people are saying that electromagnetic frequencies EMF might be a problem in cars. Really, there's no evidence. It's the fields are too weak to raise a concern. I'd be more concerned about your mobile phone right against your head than I am against the electric vehicles. Emissions are by far much more carcinogenic, and this is why VW cheated on the emissions. This is why all these 2 minutes. Well, this is why that there are strong emissions controls in the European cities where there are a lot of diesel cars. But Australia really hasn't taken full advantage and followed suit. And VW doesn't have to pay out here because they say we comply with the emissions here, but they don't comply with the emissions in Europe. So there's lots of different electric vehicles on the markets. You're all aware of them. Lastly, climate change. Emissions are bad for climate change. Fossil fuels are bad for climate change. There's multiple health impacts. We're seeing heat stress. We're seeing changes in the vectors, like dengue fever's coming down from Cairns all the way down to, it'll be down in Brisbane soon as we heat up. The asthma, more thunderstorm asthma, the dryness, your pollens. So malaria is spreading further. There's multiple health effects. Climate change is real, and WHO has basically got a series out, and on that diesel emissions is one of their, it's time to act. It's really one of their priority items because we know diesel exhaust fumes are carcinogenic, and it really is time to act on them.